Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we will talk about the 4 experiments that will clearly show our dark side and the secrets of human psychology. And these are the most notorious and best known experiments of all times. You might know some of them, and if you do, please let me know in the comments. I am very interested to hear your thoughts and opinions. So to start off, we start with one experiment from the 1950s. A man called Solomon Asch wanted to test and demonstrate the degree to which individuals' opinions is influenced by those of the group. So, he conducted and published a series of laboratory experiments. In this particular experiment, male college students had to do a simple task in real life, but one of the students was in fact an actor. The point of the study was to see how they would react to his behavior. So in actuality, only one participant was real, and he did not know about his environment and that the rest of the others were just actors. So the rest, being confederates, carefully instructed to give certain pre-selected responses. The experiment was simple. In its construction, each participant in turn was asked a series of questions to which, for example, one question was, which line is longer? And the participants gave a variety of answers, of course not to raise any suspicion of the one who was being monitored, because of course keep in mind he did not know anything about the fact that the others were just actors. And the first time they all gave the correct answer to not make him suspicious of anything. After a while they added some incorrect responses. This experiment called the Asch experiment, and the results were very interesting indeed. It showed that peer pressure could have a considerable amount of influence on the answers given. Were very interesting when surrounded by people giving an incorrect answer. Over 1/3 of the subjects also voiced an incorrect opinion, meaning that at least 75% of the subjects gave the wrong answer to at least one question. Although experimental error may have had influence, there was no doubt that peer pressure can cause conformity. It was debated whether this is because people disbelieve the evidence of their own eyes, or it was just compliance, that people hide their opinions just to belong to a group. Please tell me what you think. Do you think that it is compliance? And we go to the next experiment called helping. It is the Good Samaritan experiment, dated from 1973, a long time ago. So we go way back and to find out what this is about. The biblical story of the Good Samaritan. If you haven't heard, it is about the passing Samaritan helping an injured man in need, while other so-called self-righteous people just walk right by. This particular psychologist called John Doherty and C. Daniel Batson wanted to test if religion had any effect on helpful behavior. So they had 3 hypotheses. Number 1, people thinking religious thoughts will still no more likely than others to offer assistance. Hypothesis number 2, people in a hurry will be less likely to offer aid than others. Or number 3, people who are religious in a Samaritan fashion will be more likely to help. So in this particular experiment, the students gathered together and they had to complete a personality questionnaire. And then next to continue the experiment, they had to go to another building. But on the way to another building, they encountered a man who was slumped in an alleyway. It was unknown what was wrong with this individual. Was he drunk? Or was he hurt? So they varied, of course, the amount of urgency, and they told the students before sending them to the other building and the task that they would do when they got there. So one of those tasks was, for example, to prepare a talk about seminary jobs, and the other about the story of the Good Samaritan. In one condition, they told the subjects that they were late for the next task. So arriving at the second research site, they had the subject give the talk and then answer a helping behavior questionnaire. The amount of hurriness induced in the subject had a major effect on helping behavior. So overall, 40% offered some help to the victim in low hurry situations, 36% helped medium hurry situations, and 45% helped in high hurry situations. So all in all, ironically, a person in a hurry is less likely to help people, even if he is going to speak on the parable of the Good Samaritan. Some literally stepped over the victim on their way to the next building. So, the result of going to the next task was more important than helping the individual, of which this is all about. This is some very interesting result. Please, again, let me know what you think. Some literally stepped over, right? So the results seem to show that thinking about norms does not simply mean that they will act on them. The third experiment is about diffusion of responsibility, the bystander apathy experiment, dated from 1968. So this is called the bystander effect and was first demonstrated by John Darnley and Bibb Latany in 1968. So they became interested in the topic of following the murder of Kitty Genovese in 1964. So as a response, these researchers launched a series of experiments that resulted in one of the strongest and most replicable effects in social psychology. In a typical experiment, these participants is either alone or among a group of other participants. An emergency situation is then staged. The researchers then measure how long it takes the participants to act and whether or not they intervene at all. These experiments have often found that the presence of others inhibits helping, often by a large margin. For example, they staged an experiment around a woman in distress. In that same year, 1969, 70% of the people alone called out or went to help the woman after they believed she had fallen and gotten hurt. But when there were other people in the room, only 40% of the people offered help. What do you think about it? This is an interesting result. The next is the Stanford Prison Experiment from 1971. This Stanford Prison Experiment, as it was called, was a study of the psychological effect of becoming a prisoner or prison guard. Many documentaries have been made about this and the movies. It is a very interesting one. The experiment was conducted at Stanford University in 1971 by a team of researchers. This was all led by Mr. Philip Zimbardo. It was funded by the U.S. Officer of Naval Research and was of interest to both the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps as an investigation into the cause of conflict between military guards and prisoners. 24 male students out of 75 were selected to take a random assignment role of prisoners and guards in a mock prison situation in the basement of the Stanford Psychology Building. These participants adapted to their roles well beyond Zimbardo's expectations as the guards enforced authoritarian measures and ultimately subjected them to psychological torture. Many of the prisoners passively accepted this psychological abuse at the request of the guards. They were harassed, and other prisoners who attempted to prevent it. This experiment even affected Mr. Zimbardo himself, who, in his role as superintendent, permitted the abuse to continue. 2 of the prisoners quit the experiment early, and the entire experiment was abruptly stopped after only 6 days. Certain portions of the experiment were filmed, and excerpts of footage are publicly available. In August 1971, Zimbardo announced the end of the experiment to the participants, and the results of this experiment have been argued to demonstrate the impressionability and obedience of people when provided with a legitimizing ideology and social and institutional support. The experiment has also been used to illustrate the cognitive dissonance theory and the power of authority. The result of the experiment favor situational attribute of behavior rather than dispositional attributes. In other words, it seemed that the situation rather than their personalities caused the participants' behavior. And the last and the final experiment is the